we are told that a lot of what we have to do is in the hustle and in the networking. A lot of what we have to do is in the work. So I think that that's what's important. It's like when you're not shooting, work with your coach or go back to class, because I feel that acting is like your body, and it's like love. It's a muscle, and we really have to work at it.
Please welcome Zoe Saldaña.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out and just for hosting me. This is amazing.
See, that's how you enter a stage. I tripped just standing here.
You did?
Yeah, I didn't even trip over anything.
Well, as long as you look sexy when you did it, is that okay?
I don't know. I heard a lot of horrified sounds. Well, thank you so much for being here. And again, congratulations on a fantastic year. This is an audience of your fellow SAG-AFTRA actors.
What an honor.
So I always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? I think I might actually know this one.
I booked a commercial for Burger King, and it was the 2 for Tuesday. And this was in the 90s, and they had me come in, and for a whole afternoon I did hair and makeup, and I met everybody. They were just so great. The director was so lovely. I had to eat these stale fries that they kept spraying with a whole but not with chemicals, just like water to make it look nice and steamy, and then they gave me a voucher as I was leaving, and I remember looking at the voucher kind of going, okay, what's that? Oh. I had no idea, and they said, well, you're gonna take this, and you're gonna go to this office, or you're gonna call this number, and you're gonna become a member of this union. And I was like, why? I honestly had no idea. And they said, well, because then you will be supported, you will be protected. Also, without it, you can't really work. And I was like, okay, great. I remember that. And I remember getting my SAG card and feeling like, oh God, I'm a member of a union, like an organization, like I'm a part of something really important. And then I educated myself on what it really was. And
that's so cool. See, this is how my mind works. When you said voucher, I was like, for free Burger King? I got really excited.
I would have taken that too.
For some reason, I thought it was Law and Order, because I thought everybody's first gig was Law and Order.
No, by the time I booked Law and Order, I was already a SAG-AFTRA member, yeah.
That's great. But you did do Law and Order. You did a couple, didn't you?
I did 2 episodes of Law and Order. I think they were probably like 3 to 4 years apart, yeah.
Okay. Were you ever a killer on either?
No, but I was the sister of a woman whose husband was a killer. And then I was the daughter of a man that was wrongfully accused of killing his wife, yeah.
Okay. So one guilty, one innocent.
Exactly.
Well, again, I'm so happy you're here tonight. As you know, I said to you way back in October, I've been wanting to sit down and talk to you for the longest time, because you've had such a fascinating career. You can literally do anything. And it feels like with Emilia Pérez, everyone is really appreciating that, if they weren't already aware. Before we go back to the start, I would actually love to start with Emilia, because, this is a Spanish language musical directed by a French director, and it feels so specific, and yet often when you make these very specific things, they're so widely embraced and feel universal. I suppose it kind of all began when the film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, and you and your co-stars all shared the Best Actress Award. What was that experience like? What have these last few months been like?
Oh my gosh, what a whirlwind of emotions. I'm so proud to be a part of this story. From the beginning, it was difficult to describe it because I was always so busy just feeling it. This experience, I feel like Emilia Pérez has been an experience. It was an experience to be a part of it. It was an experience to witness it with 3,000 people in Cannes, and then it's been an experience ever since. And I was yearning. I was yearning to be a part of something where women were in the center of the narrative, and complex women, and women that were on their quest for freedom, for love, for authenticity, for identity. And I was able to sort of be a part of something, and I got to work with one of my idols, which is Jacques Audiard. And so in Cannes, I think we were having an out-of-body experience, and the whole team, the whole crew took trains and planes and automobiles from Paris to the south of France. The man that was my driver was in the south of France, because we all became sort of this community, and the story became so special to us all. So to be able to witness that kind of acknowledgement, that sort of embrace, it was unlike anything we had ever hoped for.
It's such a bold and audacious film. I mean, you really probably didn't know how it was going to play with an audience, and you're going to find out at the Cannes Film Festival. And by the way, they let you know if they don't like something. Well, luckily they did. What was that first screening like? When did you realize it was connecting with people?
I mean, we were so nervous because none of us had seen the movie. Oh. So we were watching the film for the very first time. That's a very nerve-wracking and a very vulnerable place to be. I remember Selena just kept saying the whole time that her mouth was so dry. And Edgar's hands were super clammy. I couldn't feel my feet. Well, the shoes were uncomfortable, but I couldn't feel my feet. And I just kept telling myself, stay here, don't go. Because I tend to sort of leave my body. And I punch out. And if I'm experiencing a great deal of trauma, because I get dysregulated very easily, in my life. And so I was very dysregulated, but the comforting thing was that we had each other. So we knew, and we made this promise. I remember there was one night where Edgar, Selena, and myself, we went to dinner in Paris, and we were just talking about like what this was meaning for us to be a part of Emilia Pérez. And for Selena, it was this, and for Edgar, it was this, and for me, it was this. And we made a promise that regrets were out of the table. The regrets were in the moment that you were going to either say yes, that you were going to accept this part, or no, that you were not going to accept the part. But once you made that decision, you have to live with that decision. So if the ship sails, we're sailing with it to the horizon. If it sinks, we're going down together. And that was alleviating to know that we had each other, because we knew how provocative and how audacious it was, but we also knew how important it was to tell stories of women, complex women, women that are very diverse, and how abstract of it that these women were so diverse to each other, even though they were all the same, and they spoke all the same language. They were so different from each other. And the reward of doing that, Latino women, Hispanic women, that women of color, everything about what Emilia Pérez represented to us, we were not ever going to let the success or the lack of success to impede on how special the movie was for us, period,
Yeah. I mean, it must be heartbreaking, because I'm sure you've worked on some movies that maybe didn't get the response you hoped, but doesn't make you love them any less.
Yeah, and sometimes you do. Sometimes you do learn to love something less, because what others think of you matters so much until you learn to value what you think of yourself just as much, I think it's important for actors to make decisions with your heart, because you can never be wrong. And if you make strategic decisions, if you make decisions because your team believes that that's the best thing for you to do, those experiences aren't as memorable for you. But the one that you make because you believed in something that felt just like the right thing to do for you, it's not about how successful the movie is going to be, or if 200 people see it, or 200,000 or 200 million. You're always going to be happy with your decision. So following your heart, I feel like that's the best business for you as an actor, is to follow your heart.
Did you always know that, or did it take you some time to learn that?
I think I'm a Gemini, so I tend to just do my own thing a lot. I have a lot of people with a lot of opinions already here. So, but I've there's been moments in which I've listened to my team, and we've been victorious. And then there's moments in which I did something because I really wasn't listening to my inner voice, and I was just listening to other other aspects of something, and even though maybe the movie was a success, it wasn't a good experience for me. And I feel like life is that fleeting, that what I live for, what I take home with me is the growth and the evolution that happens to me while I'm pushing myself and challenging myself. Like what I get going to work and shooting a film, that's for me. Turning the film into the audience, that's for you. And whatever comes of that, it doesn't belong to me. So I really have no say about that. The only thing that I always beg silently is that just if you're gonna break my heart, just break it carefully. Don't tell me directly.
It can be heartbreaking, though. You pour your heart and soul into these. Yeah. I actually want to go back to the beginning because I'm always fascinated where people's love of performing began. I know that you were born on the East Coast, New Jersey, I believe. Yeah. Woohoo! Who were the people or the films that sort of influenced you, or that you grew up with, or maybe just even if they just had an impact on you?
I think every member of my family, when you're just a kid, you're basically watching what everybody's watching. My great-grandpa would just watch church shows.
Wait, on TV?
Yeah. Because he was already a great-grandpa by the time I was born, and he was losing his sight, so he would only watch Mass on TV. And I just remember wanting to eat my own limbs because I was so bored. But I remember that sense memory. You remember how desperate it feels to be bored, and you kind of go, I never want to do this again. But it was interesting to see that. And then later, you use things like that, when we are in scenes where we were worshiping and for Avatar. And I wanted to understand. My ego couldn't allow me to understand why all these not V needed to believe in this next coming of someone that AWA was sending. And thank God for watching church with my great-grandpa. And so, because I was able then to kind of go, oh, it was kind of like that, because people were just so devoted and so so loyal to their faith, and that's what the Na'vi were. So everything comes hand in hand. I would say Westerns, and from my dad and my great grandma. But if I would have to pinpoint who was the pinnacle person in my life, who I take from when it comes to cinema and reading, I would say my mom. Mm. Like my mom, would read science fiction, and she would read history, and she would watch animation, whether it was The Last Unicorn, or we would watch Japanese anime, or we were watching Dune, we were watching The Deer Hunter, we were watching Nightmare on Elm Street, we were watching The Goonies, My Life as a Dog, An American Werewolf in London. And my mom was really a cinema, lover, like a natural cinema lover. And we would also then watch the making of. It wasn't just watching, Beat It, or Thriller. It was watching the behind the scenes of the making of Thriller, and knowing who this director was and all the makeup. And I remember watching the making An American Werewolf in London before I was even able to understand time, place, but I remember watching that.
I remember those too.
And being transfixed by it, and The Terminator, and then I realized as I grew older that my experience with cinema was very immersive. It wasn't just what I saw; it was how it made me feel. It was the music. It was, and then I would remember, if something made me feel cold or made me feel really warm or nostalgia. I remember when I would hear the song of the music, the composition of Terminator, da-da-dun, dun, da-dun. There was just it still makes me cry. It was just something that gave me a sense of longing that I was too young to understand, but I always knew that I wanted to feel those sensations constantly. And then my stepdad, by the time he came into our lives, and my parents are still together. He was 12, I was 12, 13, 13, 14. And he was more of the intellectual sort of mind, that he would watch A Clockwork Orange, or we would break down books by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and he was very much wouldn't let you win. So I learned to be very combative, because my stepdad, still to this day, But it's fine because we gang up on him, so
Yeah.
he doesn't really. And he's outnumbered. He's in the minority in our house because it's all women, and so. But he taught us to sort of think deeper. Like, what is the book really about? Like, there is that book, No One Writes to the Colonel. It's a very famous Gabriel García Márquez. El coronel no tiene quien le escribe. And it's about this colonel who's retired, and every day he goes to the mailbox and he's waiting for his retirement check. And I remember I had the most heated argument with my stepdad. I must have been like 13 years old. I was reading this book in school, and he was just like, well, what does the rooster represent? And I just remember like, fuck the rooster. I don't even know what the rooster represents. But the rooster was paramount to the whole story.
Yes.
So I just, and little, once I become a young adult, then I begin to understand, and then I'll let you ask questions.
No, I want to know what the rooster represents. Tell us.
Sequester the interview here, the conversation. No, I just remember, I kind of forgot now, but I just remember being completely, just my mind was blown, like my third eye was open into always like finding the true meaning of subtext, and also being relentless with what I read and what I watch, and not settling for things that may feel just one dimensional. Like, go for cinema that digs deeper. Like Seeds of a Sacred Fig. Oh. That movie made me cry. It's just what it represents today, and so important that we're witnessing that. And it's so important that it's a nominee this year in our race, and what it means for Iran and what it means for that filmmaker. Mm-hmm. Like, what an honor it is that I, with Emilia Pérez, like we're side by side with Seeds of a Sacred Fig. It's just films like that really move me, and they stay with me forever. Like, they traumatize me, but like in a good way. And I like to be traumatized by cinema. I do. Freddy Krueger fucking traumatized me, guys. Traumatized me. Nancy. Never forgot that lady in that body bag.
To this day. Like,
I won't do horror because of it.
I was going to ask if you had ever, been interested in horror.
I mean, you never say never. No, guys, I couldn't. But it introduced me to makeup. And to know that so many amazing people in our industry can make something like that seem so real, it just blows my mind.
Don't you think maybe you'd get over your horror fears if you did one?
I tell myself all the time that, but I really get lost in a story. Yeah. I cry by watching myself cry. Like, and it's not because I'm crying watching myself. I hate everything I do. I'm very critical with everything I do, but the theme or the subject, or I'll tap into what I was tapping into in order for me to get there. Like, and those things come all over, back again.
And I believe you moved to the Dominican Republic for a few years when you were young. Is that where you discovered dance?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. And how did that sort of come about and then sort of inform your acting?
I think we couldn't afford a therapist at that time. And we were going through such a hard time acclimating to not just this new place that we had moved to, but acclimating, to life without our dad. I mean, I lost my dad when I was 9. We were 8, 9, and 10, and my mom had just turned 30. She was so young. She was a young mom. They were young parents, and it was just, grief is such a hard pain because you wake up and it's just there and it doesn't go away. You can take a Tylenol, that won't help. You can go to sleep, it'll just jolt you back awake, and it kills your appetite. It not just to eat, but also to get out of bed. And so we were all, going through our respective phases, a process of grief. And my mom had it the hardest. But even in her depression and sadness, sorry.
No, please take your time.
She knew that she needed to keep us busy.
Yeah.
So Meryl went to art and volleyball, and Cicely and I, we did ballet. And we still had a tutor in the afternoons because we didn't really speak Spanish fluently, and we went to an all-Spanish school. And because they wanted to make room for us, then they introduced a very strong English program, because they also recognized that besides us, they were having a small group of students that were coming from the States, now coming back to their country if they were born in Dominican Republic, or to the country of their parents. And so the school, the community was very sympathetic, and my mom knew that in order for her to also heal, she needed to keep us busy, because children idling, it's just very, really dangerous, right? And so I remember that ballet became like my medicine. It was my cave. It was my go-to place, because I remember I had a hard time fitting in. I was very ADD, and I just said everything that was on my mind, and that wasn't nice. And so ballet was that one place that would center me and calm me down, and the piano and the bar and the teachers giving me something to do. It kept me busy, but also the more I kept, doing things physically and amazing myself, that I was able to do things, then that became a very addictive thing for me. It's like, oh, I can do anything if I just practice for hours on end. And I was relentless. I became super relentless about like waking up super early and dancing ballet before school, and then right after school, dancing ballet for 5 more hours, and then doing my homework, if I ever did it, and then doing the same thing over and over again. So I did that for like 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, did you consider doing it professionally? I feel like I've heard you say you weren't good enough, which I find
I didn't have the feet. I didn't. And the good thing about being a Gemini is that you do have like somebody in you that kind of goes, yeah, I can do anything. And you have that other person kind of goes, you really can't. And I didn't have the feet. I remember being, I think I must have been like, I would say like 18 years old, 19, and going every day to school and seeing all the girls. Now I'm back in New York, and it's a much more competitive sort of environment, and everybody dances, and they were just incredible. And so-and-so is being seen for, ABT, and so-and-so is being seen for New York City Ballet. I have Martha Graham, or maybe Alvin Ailey, and maybe this, and maybe, go to SUNY Purchase. That's around that age is when you start to kind of sit down with your dean in high school, and it's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And I remember the first time the dean was like, well, maybe teaching. Oh. And that's such a heartbreaking thing, because what I wanted was to be the prima donna. Yeah. And then being sincere, it's like I don't have it. And I don't want to dance just interpretive dance. I want to dance ballet. So I pivoted. I was like, well, okay, I've always been very practical. I'm not going to be, heartbroken. There's always something else you can do. And I remember just life on stage was really medicinal as well. So I'm like, well, I've never really used my voice. That's the only instrument I've never used. I haven't used yet. When it comes to telling a story, I can tell it with my body, with the music, whatever. But what if I were to use my voice and acted,
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't heard much about this, but you started off doing like youth theater or performing around schools. How did you get into that?
There was, we had curfews, and because New York was still very dangerous in the 90s, and also we were Latinos. Latinos don't let their kids out of their sight until you're 30. It's like you're 30, my mom is like, where are you going? I'm like, God, I'm still to the bathroom going, yeah. So after school, I would go to ballet and then home. And the only times that we would go to the city is if my parents were going to the city and we would go and have dinner in the city. Or I would have to go to the Capezio store on 57th and go buy my shoes. And because I was the only Capezio store at the time. So my mom tells me, okay, go with your sister. So I go with Mariel, my older sister, who at the time was smoking cigarettes. She was smoking Merits. I remember this. So every time we would fight, I'm like, I'm going to tell them that you're fucking smoking, whatever. So then we go, I get my shoes at the Capezio store, and as we're walking to the train, there's this little sign that says auditions for the Wiz down here. And it was this little, and I remember it was like New York Youth Theater. What was it? NY? What was it? NYYT are holding auditions for the Wiz down here. So I look at my sister and I'm like, can I just go? Let me just go inside. Let me just go see what this is all about. And she's like, okay. So, and then I tell her, it's like, if you don't, I'm going to tell them you're smoking, whatever. So I go in, and which I didn't really need to because my sister's such an enabler.
Yeah.
So I go, I sign up. And she's like, Zoe, I don't know about this. I'm like, so what? I'm just let me just get my feel. Let me just get a little thrill. And then I go and I give our number to the house and everything. And I auditioned, I danced. And I remember it was like, get on down the road. That was the song. Mm-hmm. And I rehearsed it. And I get there and I do. And I had so much fun. And everybody was so nice. And I'm leaving. And for the next week, I'm waiting for them to see if the phone would ring. Every time the phone would ring, I would run. I'm like, I got it. Hello? So I didn't want to get in trouble, and also I wanted to see if I got it. I did. I got a call back, and then now we have to tell my mom.
Oh, so you hadn't even told her at this point? How did
so I was like, okay.
it?
She was fine. Okay. My mom is like, she tries to be strict. She's so not. And I was like, Mom, so they called me back and we should go. I was like, well, Zoe, you have ballet, you have all these recitals that you have to do. So I'm like, well, let me see if I book it, and then we can, because she knew that I was kind of a step out, and I booked it.
Wow.
I booked it, but not for the Scarecrow, which is the one that I wanted to go after the Scarecrow, but I wasn't that good yet. But I can dance, and they saw my skills as a dancer, so then they gave me the part to be in the core and to fill in on all these pieces. But then I realized I really couldn't do it. I had such a full ballet schedule. So my sister ended up, joining. I said, I can't do it. Thank you so much for offering me the part. But my sister can, and she dances just like I do. And then Cicely ended up like staying with them for 5 years. I would come in and out and do plays. And she went from like doing productions like Bye Bye Birdie and Jesus Christ Superstar to then, putting up the whole production, because they teach all the kids how to do the lightings and direct it. And so she was doing all of that. And then I would come in and do sometimes some plays if I had time. So that's how it all started. Yeah.
That's so cool.
But I remember having just a lot of fun. Musical theater is a lot of fun. And it was a very beautiful contrast, because my sister was a part of that theater for like 5 years. I ended up joining another theater in Brooklyn, and that one wasn't a musical theater. That one was a lot more based on real skits that we would write. And it was a part of like a psychiatric department at a hospital in Brooklyn called Maimonides Medical Center. I joined a theater program called Faces. Yes. So I liked more that reality, that gritty kind of urban aspect of getting my training, and my sister loved more the musical theater. So we always shared kind of all of our knowledge, and we would cross-pollinate. Sometimes she would come and do skits with us, and usually then I would go do Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with them. So and that's where a manager was there one night and signed us and started sending me out, and then the Burger King led to the Law and Order, led to Center Stage, and
where you got to play a ballerina.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it does seem like it probably doesn't feel that way at the time, but in perspective, you started working fairly quick as an actor. I don't know if you ever had to take survival jobs, or if the audition process was rough for you.
I mean, I was just so excited to be going and having these experiences that I didn't know anything about the industry. So I almost feel like ignorance is bliss sometimes. Innocence is bliss. And there's a level of fearlessness that you have when you don't really know what to expect. So you just throw yourself into the unknown. But as I started to audition, I would read material, and I realized very early on, I was like, I don't want to do soap operas. And I would go for these auditions, and I'm like, they have to learn a lot of dialogue, and I was very dyslexic, and so that would give me a lot of anxiety. But also, I didn't watch soap operas, so and that wasn't the kind of content that I liked. And then TV was great, but I wanted to do more the Party of Fives or the 90210s, or independent cinema, because I was going to the Angelica a lot, whenever I was free, and I was watching a lot of independent films. So I was starting to have an idea of what I wanted to do. The only thing I remember that was quite painful is sometimes when you would meet certain casting directors and they weren't so nice. Yeah. Or you would get as far and you would meet the director or the producers and they weren't that crazy about you as the casting directors were. And that sensation of not being wanted Like it lingered. So, but I remember that my mom used to always say, and still to this day, she's such an Aquarius. Oh my God. And by the way, I don't really listen to horoscopes, but I just mentioned I'm a Gemini. My mom's an Aquarius. By the way, my sister's a Leo. There I go. But she always does this, where whenever she felt that we were very nervous to go after an interview or an audition or to go meet someone's mom, like a boyfriend's mom or something, she would go, Zoe, I'm like, what, Mom? I hope you like them. And I later understood that she was always reminding me that I mattered. So whatever I thought of someone was just as important as whatever they thought of me, sometimes more.
Yep.
So whenever I would have those really unfortunate experiences where nobody wanted me and I was going for the part of like the black girl number 4 or the gangster Puerto Rican or something, and I just remember going, I don't even want to be a part of this. These are not the kind of characters or the kind of women that I want to represent. Like I always remembered, my mom reminded me, yeah, honestly, I didn't like this director. He was rude. So you know what? Good riddance. So I always had that level of fearlessness in me, and maybe that's what saved me.
Yeah.
From succumbing to absolute insecurity and complete codependence on other people's beliefs of me or thoughts of me.
Because you really are sort of auditioning them as well, to a certain degree, deciding if this is who you want to work with.
Or if they were producers that were a little too handsy, or what you think of them is important.
So I mentioned your first film role right out of the gate was 2000 Center Stage, in which you got to play a naturally gifted ballerina. And it's not just, your first movie, it's a lead role, and you're working with Nicholas Heitner, who is like one of the
Madness of King George, Object of My Affection, Miss Saigon. I mean, need we say more? He's such a great director.
I mean, did you kind of realize what you were going out for when the whole process started?
No. And innocence is bliss, I'm telling you, because I loved Miss Saigon, but I had no idea that it was Nicholas Heitner. I think Madness of King George had just been out, or it was about to come out, and I hadn't seen it yet. But I just loved his English accent. He was just so posh, and just like nice, just a gentleman. The whole auditioning process, a very quiet and shy person. But a good eye. You can tell he had a really good eye. And he was looking for that Eva Rodriguez, and he didn't quite find her, and then until we met, and it was great.
I really think that so much of acting ultimately has to be on the job training. You really don't know how to prepare for that, being maybe first or second on a call sheet, showing up to set with a big camera in your face. What was the learning curve like for you?
Oh, everybody taught me. I remember the DP kept saying, that take was really great. I heard you. I couldn't see you because you walked and you stopped right in front of the wall. And so I was like, oh God. He goes, if you don't see the camera can't see you. Like everybody was teaching me so much on how to be on set, but also how to behave with a crew and my wardrobe. Like even if it's stinky and it's all sweaty from the day's work, just take it off and hang it, or just leave it on the sofa of your trailer or on the table. But don't just leave it on the floor. It's just little things like that I really learned to say hello to everybody, to thank caterers. Whenever they brought like those little matzo balls, they would bring these, not matzo balls, mozzarella balls with tomatoes and roasted peppers. I still remember on the set of Center Stage. I turned 21 on that set. Wow. And that was really great. And we shot in Lincoln Center with the New York City Ballet and some of the ABT dancers, because it was the summer of '99, and they were on. Because when dancers are not on tour, they kind of go on and they file for like unemployment or something, I guess, like where they still get paid, and they're still on payroll, but they're on vacation, but they still have to dance and warm up, and even though they get to live a little, but they always stay knowing that they're going to go back to their season. So all the dancers, that's why they chose to shoot the scene to shoot the movie in the summer, so that they can have access to all these dancers that were not in season. And so I learned a lot about how companies work. I was in Lincoln Center, which, I barely ever was given the opportunity to step inside Lincoln Center when I was a child. So all of a sudden here I am shooting a movie. And I remember we would walk through Lincoln Center with my grandmother, and I would tell my grandma, like, one day I'm gonna be in Lincoln Center. And she'd be like, okay, good. And then here I was, like, shooting a movie there. It was amazing.
It feels like that's a great first movie for you, too, because it is somewhat familiar. You know this world a little bit. You're experienced with it. And then 2 years later, you did Crossroads, which is completely different. This is a movie that is, it's a beloved rite of passage for so many people my age. Co-starring Taryn Manning and Britney Spears' her first acting role. Yes. What was it like making that film? I just learned, like, a couple months ago that Shonda Rhimes wrote it.
It was Shonda Rhimes. It was produced by women, casted by women, directed by a woman. Tamara Davis directed it. And it was about three young women. It was such a beautiful experience. And it was also my first time being so close to such a big public figure.
Oh, yeah.
And understanding that it was all smoking mirrors, Britney was such a down-to-earth Southern girl, and so gentle and so nice. And the contrast of this big persona that she was, as a performer, was really interesting. There were a lot of things that I saw about the business, behind the scenes that I'm like, oh God, I'd never want to be a part of that. But I got to work with such a great crew, such a great team. So that was like the beginning of understanding that I work better with good people.
Yeah.
I'm able to give the best of me if I feel safe and if I feel really comfortable and supported. And I have to also do the same for everybody else,
That's something I've known about a lot of your work. You really seem to be drawn to ensemble work. Just these wonderful. I mean, your casts are always stellar from top to bottom, but they are heavily ensemble films. And I don't think it's any coincidence you're nominated for Best Ensemble this year at the SAG Awards. Oh, yep, sure. I think it was the following year you had your first experience with a big blockbuster with Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. What was it like stepping onto like a big budget spectacle set like that? Does it feel different from shooting something like a smaller?
I mean, if it's not managed properly, it can feel very, very different. And that sensation of feeling really lost, I think it's just not good. There was just a lot of abuse of power because we were shooting on location and the strong entities weren't there, day in and day out. So a lot of mice were playing, with authority and power and a misuse of power. And it really left just such a bad taste, that experience. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do this. Like, if Hollywood is going to be like this, they can keep everything. I'm good. But then it's just, I have been very fortunate. If only I knew the numbers of the lottery. But I don't. But I've been fortunate in the sense that same year I finished Pirates of the Caribbean and I booked The Terminal.
Oh, Steven Spielberg.
So it's another big movie. And I mean, he built a whole terminal for this movie. And it's Tom Hanks and Catherine Zeta-Jones and Stanley Tucci and it's Steven Spielberg and Janusz, his DP. And what a contrast, night and day.
Really? The
humility, the love, the support, the respect to the entire crew. I mean, he would have these speakers on set and he would play music to his whole team while they're changing for the next setup, and everybody would be like, sometimes it could be the Smokey Robinson, other times it can be Nino Rota, and he would have this big iPod, those thick, heavy ones.
Oh, yeah.
The scroll and they go when you're scrolling. It's incredible. And at that time, it felt so like advanced for me because I'm such an old school person. And he would sometimes have me and Diego Luna, because we were the youngest members of the cast. He would sometimes have us, he would extend the courtesy. If Zoe and Diego want to come, I know they're not shooting today, but if they just want to come and hang out, they can. Wow. And for so many instances, I never accepted because I was just so insecure and doubtful. And then for a couple, I did, and I would come in my sweatpants and my juicy suit, guys, back in the day. Oh my God. My little juicy suit.
I got one of those.
And my Uggs. And I would just sit there next to Steven and his producers, and sometimes his mom would be on set, and he would let me hold the iPad and I would scroll. He goes, pick a song. And I remember that was the first time I saw Nino Rota. Who's Nino Rota? And he goes, oh my God. Like he wrote the composition for The Godfather. He also did all of the Fellini movies. And then after that, I was like, Fellini? Who's Fellini? Then thanks to Steven, I would go back home, and he said something that always stayed. I've always said this. In order for you to know where you're going, you need to know where you've been. So basically, just know the history of cinema and whatever appeals to you, and then go down that rabbit hole. And I remember I started renting films of Fellini, so I watched, La Dolce Vita, and then I watched what is it called?
8.5?
Yes, 8.5, and then after that, I started watching a lot of Alfred Hitchcock, and so I every experience that I would have as I was growing and evolving, that was less fortunate, then something else would come along and repair whatever damage was done, and it would invigorate and repurpose me all over again. So I'm just happy to say that my curiosity for cinema and to grow in cinema has never wavered because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if someone as, talented and powerful as Steven Spielberg can be a nice person and an encouraging person, I just don't think anyone has any excuse for being a jerk.
I think so. Yes, it's so true. The non-a-hole policy should be always a must because life is too short. Mm-hmm. But I do, before we move on, I do have to say that Jerry Bruckheimer had heard, I guess, in an interview that I had shared, having, a bad experience on his set. And then eventually I did meet him, and he was such a gentleman, and he apologized on behalf of whatever it was that he felt responsible for. And I always have to mention that because that means a lot. Sometimes the repair is just as important, and he really did. So if they call for pirates, I can't say that I'll say no.
Jerry Bruckheimer is so nice. Yes. Like, that's so weird because he's like the super producer, makes these high octane movies. And I don't know why. I think he's just like a soft spoken, sweet guy.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
So again, if Jerry Bruckheimer can be nice.
Anybody.
I mean, you have worked with so many amazing directors. You mentioned Ignazia Holland and J.J. Abrams, obviously, James Cameron, Jacques Audiard, of course. What is it you sort of hope for from a director? What's the best case scenario?
That they listen to my ideas, even if they don't use them. I think it's so important because I care so much, and I come with a lot of energy, and that has intimidated filmmakers in the past, not just men, but also women. And it's been hurtful. Mm-hmm. When I'm put in my place. Actors don't have to be put in their place. Actors don't have to be broken down as if they're horses. Actors need to be respected, and their space needs to be respected. Actors should not be assholes, that's for sure, but it's such a vulnerable thing to be an actor and to be asked to open up and introduce so many portals, become that portal where so many emotions come in and out, and you have to revisit parts of your past if that is your process, and it puts you in such a vulnerable spot. So if you are working in an insensitive production, that can be a detrimental experience for an actor. So I just like to be heard, and it's so crazy because the bigger the director, the eager they are to listen to your ideas, and that's so awesome. So I don't like to work with actors that have a lot to prove. That's, at least for me, I'm not a good combo for them because I come so hard. I'm like, what do you think about this question? And blah, 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 and da, da, da. And no. And then when they kind of go, no, we already spoke about that. And it's like, oh, when? I wasn't around. Like or that's really nice, but I don't like the condescension. I don't, I may not be able to speak English properly because Spanish is my first language, but it doesn't mean I'm not smart. It doesn't mean I didn't work on this. It doesn't mean I didn't prepare for this scene in my own way. So I don't like to be babied, but I do like to be incorporated and included. And the older I get, thank God for menopause. I just don't have patience for that anymore. So the moment if I sit down with a director and we're interviewing and I just feel like he wants to impress me by correcting me, I'm just not, but that happens more than you think. And I can always sense also when a director, when I'm not his choice, but the producers are the ones that are forcing him or her to meet with me. If I feel like I'm not going to be respected, if I'm not going to be welcomed, I just don't want to do it because it's 3 months out of your life. 3 to 5 months where you then have to walk home after that experience and you have to spend a whole year, sometimes longer, repairing what they took from you, what you gave to them. So I just think as actors, yes, we have to be respectful. We have to come prepared. I was watching an interview with Bill Nighy where he says, actors that are asking for sides the day of a scene. And when I saw, it was a post on Instagram. When I saw this, I was like, oh, I did that for so many years.
Really?
And how could I have done that? And now, even if I have to wake up at 4:15 in the morning, my pickup is at 7:30, I will spend an hour and a half memorizing my lines so that I don't have to ask for sides unless the director that day decides to change the whole fucking scene. But that's when we're all like sides. The AD, the actors, the PAs, we're all like, oh, but at least let's come prepared. Let's be ready.
I was going to ask you if there were any questions you asked or warning signs. You kind of said this, that you get a sense if someone might not be a good match for you. But I've learned that a lot of directors are good actors and they can kind of fool you. So sometimes you end up on a set that is not what you thought it would be.
Yes. And when that happens, it's just do your job.
Yeah.
Just learn, come completely prepared. Be absolutely flawless. You will be twice as exhausted because it just means you had to do double the work. But then when you leave, you can leave with your head high.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about 2009 was a huge year for you because that's the year you did both Avatar and Star Trek. And we've talked about you were a big Star Trek fan. Did I hear your role in The Terminal helped you get Star Trek? Is there some connection there?
In The Terminal, I played this INS. Is it INS officer?
Yeah,
I'm not using the terms right. Sorry, guys. But just go with it.
I think it's INS.
Yeah. And but she was a Trekkie or a Trekor, depending on who you ask. And so I did my research. I saw some documentaries on being a Trekkie. And that's when I spoke with my mom, and my mom disclosed oh my God, Star Trek was this. And I used to watch it with my grandparents. And back in the day, it was dubbed in Dominican Republic. So it wasn't Star Trek, it was Viaje a las Estrellas. So I started kind of watching it in Dominican Republic, but I just remember it was so old by the time I was watching it, and you just don't want to watch that. And then when I went back to the States, you're watching it on UPN 9. And in New York, at least in the East Coast, UPN 9 is like that network that only your parents used to watch, And I was like, Mom, that show's so old. And then my mom was the one that kind of broke it into me. It's like Gene Roddenberry, and this is who he was, and this is what it represented. This is why it was so important for so many people that at the time, they told you, they would tell him, this show would never work if you're doing it in present day in the 60s. Because there was no concept that a Russian, a Japanese, and an American person of color can be in the same room and they were all working for the sake of peace. It was not. And the only way it would work is if you go to space, and that's, I never forgot that. And I would read those interviews of his. And then I was shooting Avatar, and I got so used to on the set of Avatar that you would come in your onesie and all your dots, and all of a sudden, oh, Robert Zemeckis is there, George Lucas or Steven Spielberg, and they're talking with Jim, and one day Jim comes to me and goes, "Someone's coming to visit. I think you're gonna be really excited, and you're gonna owe me." And I remember, like, come on, I was like, I'm 27. I already owe everything to James Cameron. But that was like his take on it. So J.J. Abrams was the guest that day. And meanwhile, JJ's fanning just as much as, I was fanning over both of them. And he does the whole Avatar tour. And little did I know, my team had forgotten to mention that JJ was there because he also wanted to consider me for the role of Neo da Uhura for Star Trek. So
No one told you this?
Or maybe my reps did and I just didn't read the email or something.
Maybe they were smart and didn't want to freak you out.
A lot. Like after all the work was done, I was like reading all my emails. Back in then, it was like on your laptops. I didn't have I didn't have a BlackBerry yet. I was always like reading everything. So I guess I missed it. And and so I was just like, well, what's the whole fuss about it? And I remember Jim going like, he wants you to audition for the part of Uhura, but he goes, but after this meeting, I invited him over and everything. Like, I think he's just going to give you the part. He did. He offered me the part.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah. So I owe Jim that.
Yeah. Knowing how much your mother loved the original Star Trek, how did she feel when she knew that Uhura and Spock were going to be involved? Because that's not canon of the old series,
She was very happy.
Yeah.
She was very happy about that. But I think that it was more around like Jim was happier, J.J. Abrams was happier. You know what I mean? Like my mom knew so much of it and then she kind of didn't.
Yeah.
And then it was mainly all the people around me that kind of fed into my excitement. And then I got to meet Nichelle Nichols. Oh. What a wild lady. Yeah. Oh my God, what a hippie, what a visionary. She followed her own tune, like what a rebel. Everything about her was mesmerizing.
Yeah, she was a real groundbreaker.
And she was tough as nails and just so sexy and confident. I remember sitting next to her because she came to visit on the set and she would talk and I find myself doing the same expression that she was doing. Oh God! For a moment, I was just like, "No, I'm not Uhura. I'm Nichelle." Like it was so
great. Going back to Avatar, obviously it went on to become fairly successful. But at the time, did you have any idea what you're getting into? Because motion capture was really new. I don't know, how many actors would respond if they were told, you're going to work really hard, but we're not necessarily going to see your face.
I believe that Avatar has been the most life-changing experience in my life as an artist. I think that before Avatar, every role that I did, I was not even scraped. I was just staying on the surface, doing the best that I can, following my instincts, which probably were natural, but not really digging deep enough. And Neytiri required so much dehumanizing. It's like it was like breaking down the program of what it's like to be human on such a cellular level that I became completely addicted to the whole process of diving deep and getting lost in a character, like allowing, opening up with consent to the spirits in the energetic field and allowing yourself to become possessed with someone else's life, someone else's journey. And it was, I got so lost playing Neytiri. Like Neytiri didn't know how to lie. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? I've been lying my whole life. Did you eat the cookie? Like we're as humans, we lie to survive. We lie to get by. We lie to succeed, and we lie.
Especially actors.
And how do you process? They don't know how to lie, and it's At the time, I have a very special bond with my nephew. He's trans, and at the time he was still his former self, but I was spending a lot of time with them, And the simple answers of why they didn't want to eat beans was research for me to put Neytiri together.
Yeah.
I remember one time I gave them rice and beans, and it's like, I just want the broth. I don't want the beans. Why, kiddo? Why don't you like the beans? They were 5 at the time, just turned 5. Well, you tell me you're giving me beans, but when I bite into them, they taste like potatoes. So it's very confusing to me. I never forgot that. And still to this day, I can't explain how that fed into my research.
Wow.
But it was Neytiri.
Yeah.
Neytiri, if you tell her you're going to meet her at 5, she's going to be there at 5. And if you don't show up, it's going to hurt her. Because you gave her your word. And children are the same.
Yeah.
You know when you break a child's heart, you've changed their lives forever. You've taken their innocence from them. And that, going back to that childlike sensation of what it was like to be broken for the first time, what it was like to be really genuinely excited for the very first time. That only happens when you're a child. And then we spend all of our lives trying to get back to that place. And acting gives me that, it just gives me that privilege.
Yeah.
To be able to go back to certain sensations that I didn't experience long enough in order for me to repair them. Or to just simply live in that space because it was just so delicious. So my nephew was paramount in me putting Neytiri together.
Wow.
Without my nephew, I do not think I would have captured. I think I would have faked it, but I don't think I would have felt the levels of rage and love and betrayal and pain and happiness that Neytiri was supposed to feel had I not been around them for such a long time.
I mean, one of the things I think about her is that she has no poker face because she doesn't want to have one. And like one of the first things she does is she's just so disgusted by Jake, and she has no trouble like showing it. She's like, ugh, this guy.
Yes. Or even showing to her mom.
Yeah. When
her mom tells her, you're gonna teach him our ways.
Yeah.
That was natural, guys. That wasn't in the script. And all of a sudden, I'm murmuring in her because I remember my nephew used to do that. He was going through like a phase where he didn't want to go somewhere, or he didn't want to wear something that my sister wanted them to wear, and well, you're gonna wear it, and that's final. those tantrums, like Neytiri has a tantrum,
Yes.
And her mother's like, enough. And she's like, come, and everything about that was just so, it was so fun. It was so fun.
That's why, because I think of that character as sort of childlike, but not childish, if that makes sense. Yeah. And that's I guess what we're seeing.
And I need to say that it needed to be that because it makes Jake even more cynical. Mm-hmm. And then when he decides to break that and to fall into this and to live this reality as his own, like it made his journey much more significant. If I knew everything, if Neytiri knew everything and she was just, cynical or so multi-layered and not so simple, then Jake's journey would not have been as profound. He chooses to love her. She doesn't have a choice. He just creeps in because she's just so, like you said, she's childlike, but she's not childish.
You also obviously, I actually have lost count of how many films that you appeared as Gamora, originally in Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't even know where to begin because this character is such a badass and. One of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe, but I'm going to be totally honest, when Guardians of the Galaxy was first being discussed, I was like, what a terrible idea. A lot of people were. I remember, I was working on something adjacent with Bradley Cooper, and we're like, so you're a raccoon? Like, we were all, so white. Like, why would you do this? You just got an Oscar nomination, And, we were completely wrong. How did you know, or did you know you just wanted to do what you wanted to do?
I think it was James Gunn. There was just something about James Gunn, and mind you, his credits. I was going through a very arrogant phase at the time because I had been in Star Trek and Avatar, and I was like, "Why me?" And he was like, "Well, because you were in Star Trek and Avatar." He really believed in me, and I didn't. I was afraid to go back to space again. Out of fear. That's when I started being strategic, and thank God I didn't go with my I followed my instinct of just working with him, because I do believe that only James Gunn could have brought the Guardians of the Galaxy to life in the way that he did. No other filmmaker would have been able to do that. So there is no Guardians of the Galaxy without James Gunn. That is for sure. And just his level of comedy and sarcasm and just dark jokes when it comes to like animals, like behaving badly, like because Rocket Raccoon is such a jerk.
He's such a jerk.
And he's just so smart, but also Star-Lord like is so dumb sometimes. And so I just, the level of humor that existed in the extremes of how far he would take these characters was just so exciting.
Yeah.
We just needed to see how this was going to unfold. And he never settled for anything but excellence, and that was, it wasn't an easy shoot. He shot a lot of takes in the beginning for the first movie, because I feel like there was a lot that he needed to prove.
Yeah.
And but it worked. He paid it off, and what he released was so much more magical than what we ever believed. And I think that we started understanding it the day that we were shooting the scene when Groot grows to protect us. And he says, "We are Groot."
Yep.
We're shooting and I have paint and we're tired, we're exhausted. And all of a sudden we're doing this scene and we tapped into this frequency that was so beautiful. And that's when I knew, I'm like, this is going to be really special.
Yeah.
It's going to be really special for younger audiences, but also for adults. I just have a feeling. We all kind of cried that day on set. And so it was beautiful. I had a lot of ideas for Gamora. I had a lot of ideas. I had seen something about the Lost Boys of the Sudan, and as I was putting her together, because I wanted to understand what it must be like to be taken by force from your people, and then raised in a life of violence, and then forced to commit those same crimes onto your own people. And I go deep, guys. I'm intense. So I that was sort of like what I based her pain from.
Wow. Yeah.
And how much she just lived with a lot of shame. Like Gamora lives with a lot of shame for her crimes, and she doesn't know how to sort of like make amends with that. It's unfortunate that it's a PG-13 movie. So I would have liked to have taken it deeper and further. And then I based her fighting skills. At that time, there were so many Marvel movies coming out, and everybody, like, they were all kind of like, all the fight sequences were being designed by the same kind of stunt teams, which are great. They're incredible. But every hero in every movie was always landing like, and I was like, I don't want to land like that. Yeah. I don't want to fight like that. Like, she's a sword fighter. So I was, my husband, he and I were already together, and he's such an eccentric Italian artist, and he and I were having these amazing dinners with other artists, and I have to thank my husband Marco, who really opened my eyes in terms of like the level of art that lives in our lives now. It defies cinema. It's not just cinema. It's visual arts, it's conceptual art, it's oil on canvas, it's sound, it's lights, it's sometimes it's just a deep conversation. So my life became a lot more open in the abstractness of art, and it's thanks to Marco. So long story short, we were having dinner with friends in the art world, and there was a woman, an artist. I forget her name, and I should be more responsible and know names, but I'm perimenopausal, so go with it. But she had shot in slow motion this footage of this bullfighter doing this sort of bullfighting step across a set that she designed as she was revealing this Goya painting. And it's I don't know, it's not Picasso. Is it Picasso? It's The Massacre. It's that painting, that very famous painting of Pablo Picasso. And she shot it at I don't know how many frames per second. So the bullfighter, which is such an elegant person, the way that they move, and the way that he was moving was in such a way that as he's sort of like, he's moving in this way, but he's moving like across, and then she's lighting the painting, and I remember right there as I'm watching, sorry, it smokes a little, I realized, I'm like, Gamora is a bullfighter. That's how she's going to handle her sword. And I remember coming in and telling James and the stunt coordinator, who was such a dude. And he just wanted me to land like this the whole time. And I'm like, well, Gamora's a bullfighter. And they're like, a bull what? And I'm like, this is the way she's going to hold her sword, and she's going to conceal it, waiting for the bull to come to her, and then she's going to, del toque de queda, blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
And they're watching all this, and they're like, okay, well, great. I'm like, so I need to sit down with a bullfighter. We're in London. We're like in pre-production. We're starting to shoot in like 2 weeks. And the stunt coordinator, he found a bullfighter.
Wow.
Who was just in town for a week visiting his girlfriend. And he came over and he gave me maybe like 5 or 6 sessions of just movement, and to me and my stunt double. And we were able then to incorporate that entire thing into Gamora. So I do have to thank that stunt coordinator that wanted me to land like this. Because then after he saw how serious I was, I wasn't going to let it go. Then her whole fighting, design was based off of being a bullfighter.
But, yeah. But also, this is why it's so great when directors listen to you, because she was wholly original. It was something different that we hadn't seen before. Yeah. And it was a great idea.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to jump ahead to Emilia Pérez because, this is something, you mentioned Jacques Audiard. This is something that only could have come from his brain, I feel. How did you sort of find out about the role of Rita? And we were talking earlier about this. This doesn't lend itself to a 20-second elevator pitch. Did you get to see a script? Were you sent any of the music? How did you know?
Eventually, but I Rogue Sutherland, Ida Zanetti, and Ali Trustman at CAA, great, incredible people. Rogue was setting up a meeting for Jacques at CAA there. And this was a film that CAA helped, Why Not Productions put some of the money together.
That's a great name for a production company.
Right?
Why not?
It's so fantastic. And so they bring in Jacques. Jacques meets with all the agents. He breaks down all these characters. And my agents, they just felt like I was made for Rita Mora Castro. Mm-hmm. And they immediately call me. I think at the time, I must have been taking my kids somewhere, so I wasn't responding to my phone, and they were like psycho texting me, like, pick up your phone, pick up your phone, pick up your phone. And I did, and they were like, Jacques Audiard, we know he's in your bucket list of directors to work with. Well, this is his next movie, and there's a character for you. She's Mexican. I'm like, whoa. Wait, because I did not want to repeat, an experience of appropriating myself again, and but I wanted the opportunity to work with Jacques Audiard. And if it wasn't for them, they were like, just take the meeting. Don't just say no because you're not Mexican. Just take the meeting. You never know. He may change something about this character to design it for you. And so I did a Zoom with him, and I was so afraid. Because sometimes, when you want something really bad, it doesn't really go according to how you plan. They sent me the songs. They sent me some sides. I read the sides. I rehearsed the songs, and I just took the Zoom, 1 minute at a time with Jacques. But we ended up having a great conversation. That it was only supposed to be 30 minutes. It lasted an hour 15 minutes. And then I sang for him in the end. And the conversation went so well. I think he felt something in me, that I possessed something that he wanted to see in Rita. And at one point I hear him saying, because I can understand a little bit of French, I hear him saying to Jibe, she doesn't really need to sing if she doesn't want to. And I said, no, I want to. I want to sing for you. And I did. I sang. There was a song that did not make it into the movie, but it's called Cuatro Años. And it's this great, beautiful song when, after Rita brings home the children to Emilia, and Jesse goes to sleep and the kids are sleeping, then they sit down and they just catch up. And it's basically like, well, you replaced these little golden shoes that Rita had, these little ratty shoes that she used to wear because she couldn't afford other shoes. And now she's wearing these like YSL shoes. So in the song, Emilia makes references to that. And then I make references to just who she is and her hands and how her voice changed. And then they start sort of looking at each other and they say, 4 años sin verlos pasar. 4 years without even knowing. They just went by. And then, but look how much we've changed. They both sort of transitioned in their own right. Mm-hmm. So that was my auditioning song, which later Jack cut out of the movie. But, but he didn't cut out me.
Actually, I think my favorite song in the movie is "Lady," which you sing with the doctor. Yeah, I know that's kind of an obscure one, but
I love it.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and like having to go back and like demanding a track of it right away so that I could write, because it has all those wonderful sayings, change the body, change society, change the soul. I think it's so beautiful.
I think so.
Yeah, it's a great one. But the other one I love is, of course, El Mal, which also known as the Awesome Red Suit song, which is also nominated for an Oscar. And there's so many amazing moments in this movie, but this is such a showstopper. Can you talk about, working first of all with the composers to get that song correct, to communicate what you want to correct, but also working with Jack and the crew, to get it right.
Yes, I mean, there was some French moments, I do have to say, because we were working with so many languages, and Spanish was the language of this opera. And there were moments in which, and they were surrounded by Mexican consultants. There are people that flew in from Mexico, that flew in from Spain, that are from Mexico to consult not just in the music composition and the writing of the songs, but also in capturing some type of authenticity within this dystopian, surreal, place that Jacques Audiard was creating. So there was just a lot of collaboration. I remember there was one line where I spoke to Jacques and Camille about Rita, and if I was going to be Rita, we already accepted that as me being Rita, I was going to be a Dominican immigrant living in Mexico, because Latinos don't only immigrate to the north; they immigrate to each other's countries. So Dominican Republic is full of Argentines and Venezuelans and Colombians, and every time there's a political turmoil in Chile, all of us as countries, we all open our doors to each other. Mm. In some way, at some level of capacity, that wherever we may see fit. So my take was that, Rita had arrived in Mexico, but even though she had assimilated the culture, she was still very much an outsider. And that gave me also the opportunity to tap into my life experience being an Afro-Latina. As a Latina, there's a systemic issue that we have in our nations, and it's having to do with colonialism and colonization and how we rip each other apart. It affects our identity, who we are day in and day out. And these are conversations that are uncomfortable. We don't like to have on a larger scale. And who better to know about this than the darkest person, the darkest Latina in the room at any given time. So I know what it was like to be called the N-word in Latin America, because I've never been called that here in the States. And those were very painful, traumatic experiences for me growing up in Latin America, for the time that I grew up in Latin America. Rita Mora Castro gave me an opportunity to go back to those painful memories and incorporate those experiences to Rita, because she was having those on her own in Mexico, in El DF, and in hopes that by playing this character, we bring some type of just awareness and conversations that we still have to have, no matter how uncomfortable. It doesn't mean they're not happening. We just have to have them. So there was and I remember having a conversation with Gummy and with the Mexican advisor that she had on putting her songs together in Spanish. And I said, I want to incorporate a word that it's not the N word, but it's like, it is a denigrating word to call blacks in Latin America. It's like, what word is that? Prieta. And there's a song, Todo y Nada. Tengo todo que perder. That song. There's one line where the girls go, and when are you gonna open your own, business, your own law firm? And I go, who knows? Maybe when I'm not black anymore. Quién sabe cuando ya no sea prieta. And that was something that we all in court, that, after having extensive conversations with me, and how this Rita was molded a little bit to me as a cast, as a role. That was a line that was added that I very much appreciated, but it was very painful for me to say that line because it just meant that I needed to share something, but it wasn't about me. It was more about Rita, and Rita was going through that.
I feel really shallow now because I just want to ask if you kept the suit. But I really have to know.
I asked, and just so you know, YSL gave me the suit, but Virginie Montiel, who's the costume and art director of the movie, she kept it because she had a feeling that this movie was going to be something really special. And she's also Jacques Audiard's life partner. And they've been collaborating together on so many movies. And she's like, no, this suit is going to be in museums and da. And I'm like, okay. I still ask her about it, by the way. I'm like, can I get a suit?
When it's done with the museum tour.
Maybe.
I remember seeing this movie and going and not knowing anything about it. So being surprised, first of all, that people started singing. But then, once I adjusted to that, every few minutes, like my jaw was dropping in a good way. And then something that happens sometimes when you see movies at early screenings, they bring up the lights right afterwards and you're not ready and you're a mess and you're like, nope, just give me a minute.
Crying.
Yes. It was such an experience. And so I would tell people about it and say, like, I really love this movie, and if you don't love it, it's going to break my heart. And luckily, all my friends have just fallen in love with it as well. But why do you think it's resonating so deeply with people? I mean, it's a great movie, but there's something more to that. It has that, that special sauce that you can't market and describe.
I think that these women live extraordinary lives. Extraordinary. They're just lives that are not common lives, the wife of a drug lord, a lawyer that is helping narcs get away with their crimes, a woman that has just survived feminicide, Adriana Epifania's character, and a criminal that has always been a woman, is able to transition, not for the sake of escaping his crimes, but for the sake of finding freedom once in his life and her life. I think that we've all felt like outsiders. We've all felt like we don't belong. We've all felt misunderstood. And I think that women go through that in their own respective ways, day in and day out. These women are completely diverse from each other, even though they're all kind of like interconnected through Emilia Pérez. I do believe that for a trans actor, it is the role of a lifetime. And so that I hope that really continues to resonate with filmmakers, and we begin to create more opportunities for trans actors, not just because they're trans, but because they're fucking talented when they really are, rightfully so, and that has nothing to do with their transness. And I think that stories centered around women and their struggles, and no matter how unapologetic, no matter how complicated women are, I think that also is resonating a lot more now than more than ever. I don't know. It's difficult to explain what is it about Emilia Pérez, because it's not something that I'm able to experience here. I've just been able to experience her through here. And sometimes art doesn't need to make any sense. Sometimes we get too heady and we address art with our minds first, and we cheat the rest of our senses of an experience that's how you're meant to sort of, have it. And sometimes art is just meant to be discussed. Emilia Pérez, I don't think you can discuss Emilia Pérez without feeling it first. And then sit with those feelings and then see what resonates with you. I don't know. There's just something really beautiful in the music. Camille and Clément created such an experience with the composition and the words that she put together. I don't know, because at times the film feels Mexican to me, but it also feels very global to me.
Yeah.
This could have been this movie could have happened anywhere around the world, because they all have these situations, but Jacques Audiard with his team and this cast, I don't know. Maybe we were all there at the right time. Maybe we were all, maybe just Jack tapped into something that was really special. I still to this day I can't explain it, but I am so proud to have been a part of it. I really am.
I love all four of these women, and it's funny because I get like weirdly protective of them. Like the other day, one of my friends was saying something about Jesse, Selena's character, and I was like, "What? I love Jesse. She puts up with all his shit and does everything he says, and then comes like don't talk bad about Jesse." And they're like, she's not real.
I know. She was, she fell in love with this guy, and she was a teenager.
Yep.
This happens a lot.
Yep.
All these young brides, and they think that because everything looks super shiny, they're going to have a better life, when in reality they don't. She doesn't know which way is up half of the time, and she's always asking people, and what she's trying to do, she's trying to go back home. And she's trying to find love and in her own way, and so is Rita. Rita thinks that the love that she believes she deserves is in the success that she's going to have, and of finally being somebody. And when she achieves that, she's still super lonely.
Yeah.
So the love that she needs is right around the corner. And for Emilia, imagine what could be of a life if their environments were different.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just a product of your environment. And if your environment was a life of crime, it doesn't matter how much you change, you're going to go back to what you know. And life is going to catch up. That's what that was Jack's story when it came to the opera, the tragic story of Emilia Pérez and Epifania. How is it that from violence, she's able then to find love and really be truly deserving of it in the hands of someone that committed atrocities? But little does she know that it's coming in this gentle form of a woman that is giving her so much love that she's never been treated with so much kindness. So everything about this movie is definitely, it's a story about redemption and how much do we believe that we understand redemption.
And it comes back,
how far are we willing to go for that?
It comes back to the Lady song again. You don't know what it's like to be a queen when you were born to fight and raised to kill. Yeah, I think that
Better dance or die.
Yep, exactly. Oh, now I'm going to need those. Sorry.
For real?
No, I'll be okay.
I'm gullible, man.
I'll just trip again. That'll lighten the mood. I do want to take time for some audience questions. I'm sorry I've been so selfish and I haven't gotten to these. I didn't even get to Lioness, which is also a fantastic show. Yeah. I mean, I do want to say, though, as someone, I mentioned, these three amazing franchises. I should have said four, because Taylor Sheridan is like a force unto himself. And I imagine it had to be something really special to bring you to TV.
He's crazy, guys.
He's a cowboy.
Taylor's crazy. I can't wait till the day where he and I can be together doing a Q&A so I can finally tell you what it was like to shoot with him. He is so talented. A really good writer, a really great storyteller. He has a lot of feelings and he has a lot to say, but he's crazy. He doesn't mind I say this. It's okay. And I get to call Nicole Kidman my friend and my coworker. Like never in a million years. Portrait of a Lady is one of my most favorite performances of her. To Die For, right? Is it To Die For?
Oh yeah.
She's so great. She's just so beautiful, and I learned so much. And then Morgan Freeman, Michael Kelly, Liza, Jill, Genesis Rodriguez. It's just LaMonica Garrett. What a cast! We have fun, you guys. We really do. With the 50 pounds of equipment they put on us, 104 Texan weather, and we're still laughing. It's a lot of work, and I'm happy that I went through that process because I wanted to know what it was like to say a lot more than just 2 lines and then an action sequence, you know, and which I can do. I'm fine. Now I guess I can say that confidently, but I wanted to know what it was like to be in a show, in a story where the information that these actors are exchanging with each other is what carries the story. And he is known for his scripts and his heavy dialogues and the interactions that his characters are having. And Sicario is a film that I can watch over and over again. It's such a powerful film. So I wanted to accept that challenge, but I was scared shitless every day on season 1, like you wouldn't believe. Yeah.
But you came back for season 2, so
I did. And we're gonna go for season 3.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was official. We have a question from Chrissy. Forgive me if I mispronounce anyone's name. Chris.
We dropped some questions.
I know. I was like, where did they go?
We may not get to all of them, but
Here, we'll do a speed round.
Yes.
Chrissy La Peria. Thank you. Okay. Wants to know, do you still get nervous? And if so, when was the last time you felt that nervous? Or was it during the audition process? Or do you even have to audition still?
I do. I auditioned for Emilia Pérez. I hope that never goes away. I hope I don't have to do it all the time because I feel like, gosh, I've earned my stripes, at least some of them. I'm nervous every day. I was nervous walking here. I don't ever want to be in a position where a room full of people like you is natural to me. Like what you think of me matters most because we are in the same union and we're actors, and we understand what it is like to today have something and then tomorrow, you know, you're looking for something, and that instability can make anybody nervous. Mm-hmm. So I still, as me, live with that nervousness because I have mouths to feed as well, and also like I still have goals. I still have things that I want to do, and so I get nervous all the time.
We have a question from Jasmine W., who has very nice handwriting. After all that you've achieved in your career, how do you ground yourself and reset so that the roles you embody don't consume you? Especially these last few roles have been really challenging.
I'm a very family-oriented person. So when I'm not here, I'm only with my family, and I'm a homebody. And if I ever go out, I want to go out with my parents. And if I ever drink, I want to drink with my parents and my husband's parents, because they're all kind of best friends. I do. I have a beautiful family, and we have been children that, with the little that we've had in life, we have been exceptionally loved, and we still are. So according to my mom, we're like the coolest shit in town. Sometimes I'm just like, chill, lady. You know, like, be humble. But she's like, you're amazing. You know, she's very... So I always want to be around that. She's like my wingman. That's how I kind of ground myself. I do need to acknowledge that is a very big burden for my family to carry, because they should be the ones answering that question. When I come home, I believe I'm fine. But they're the ones that are living with me day in and day out when I'm inhabiting different worlds, different people, and how I put them together and how they come off. According to me, I am not a skilled actor. I do not do that. I don't feel it. And they're always like, this fucking crazy bitch. Sorry, guys, but it's true. So I guess I guess it's you know, but I'm always with them.
You kind of joked earlier that your sons aren't impressed by you, or I find that hard to believe. Like, do they know their mom's an action figure, right?
No, they do. They do. And their friends are much more excited to meet me. And that's when they're like, Mommy. But I'm still the one that orders them around and bosses them around, so they're not thrilled. And I'm mommy.
Yeah,
I know.
well,
I
you're the
guess
cool mom.
Sai and Bowie, my older boys. I guess they kind of have a deeper understanding, but Zen still has that Yorkie like thing that he's 8, so he does that. You know how Yorkies do that when you talk to them and they kind of go. Like he's trying to process this, but there's a lot of the films that I've done that they still can't see. They're lighthearted children, so they've never seen Avatar. One of them just saw one of the Guardians movie, but they can't really see the other ones. They've gone to the shoots of when I'm shooting this. Like I had them on set of Emilia Pérez many times, especially when we were doing vaginoplasty. Oh, it's okay. Those are dancers. They were just like, Mommy, they're naked. I'm like, they're dancers. Even the French were like, are you sure you want them here? But it was fine. Like they knew all the dancers and they were like making all the dance moves and behind the cameras. But yeah, sometimes it hits them and other times it doesn't.
Yeah. I'm so sorry because we're out of time.
One more question.
One more. Okay.
I talk too much.
No, please. We have a question from Carol J. McKenneth. I don't know if that's correct. Did I get that even close? Okay. What would you say to an artist who is just beginning to start their career that maybe took you years to learn but could have been so impactful early on? Yeah.
I mean, where's the bottle of wine, girl? Work hard, sleep hard.
Oh, yes.
I had my years of partying, so there was just a lot of party, and all of a sudden what happens in this town is that what you witness at night becomes much more real than what you're doing during the day. So you're sort of like you're rushing your day, you're rushing your sessions, you're rushing your lessons, you're rushing your work just so you can hang out because so and so is going to this party and oh my God, it was and we got into Villa and blah blah blah, blah then Teddy's and so I know that we are told that a lot of what we have to do is in the hustle and in the networking. A lot of what we have to do is in the work. So I think that's what's important. It's like when you're not shooting, work with your coach or go back to class, because I feel that acting is like your body, and it's like love. It's a muscle, and we really have to work at it. We can't be cavalier with it. And when you're not training, watch someone else's work. So curate art in your life. Eat art. Listen to art, wear art, go to art, view it. Because I do believe that when we surround ourselves in a life full of artists and art, it's always inspiring us and filling our wells of joy. Versus like doing the networking, guys, 50 years can go by and you can spend your whole life just networking. Mm-hmm. Going to the San Vicente bungalows and going to the chateau and going to this and the hustle and the hustle and the hustle. And you're like, where's the substance? Where's the substance? Go to the fucking movies. Whenever they're having an introspective of somebody at LACMA, go view it. Whenever they're, if the Broad has specials, go to the Broad. And go watch art. The Hammer Museum, this theater opened here in Westwood. Go to this. They're doing a Hitchcock thing. Go watch it. Talk to other artists. Create book clubs. Devour certain scripts. What was it about it? Because the moment you're doing that, you're always inspiring yourself and you're reminding yourself. We lose sight that what is it that you want when it comes to this business? Do you want to be famous? Or do you want to work? I think that those lines become really blurred. And the nightlife and the hustling is for famous people. But the work is for the artists. So that's one thing that, thank God I learned it on time. before I started becoming like, maybe I have a problem or something. Like, but thank God I didn't. But I wish I would have been doing a lot more artful things with my time other than just hanging out and dancing.
I love any advice that involves sleep. That is, seriously. As a fellow perimenopausal, I relate. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for being a great audience.